Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network, and joining me to talk Rockets and how this crazy Luka trade affects the franchise going forward is Rockets analyst Bill Ingram. Great to have you, Bill. And I got to say that we scheduled this prior to the Luka news, but you're uniquely qualified for this story because of your background. Can you share with us your connection to both teams and then, sort of your entire background?
Sure. Well, I started covering the NBA in 1999 with the Orlando Magic. I was writing about the Rockets primarily, and then Nelson Luis, who was then the head of PR for the Rockets, offered me credentials. So my partner asked me what it would take for me to be back in Texas, and I said, ask. So I've been covering the Rockets. My first game covering the Rockets was actually here in Dallas, where I'm based, at Reunion Arena. And I ducked into this kind of weird little visitors locker room that they had there, and Akeem Olajuwon is sitting right there. And now I grew up in Houston, worshiping the ground practically that Akeem played on. And so that was a moment for me. But over the years, I got to know him quite well. Been to his house, Rudy Tomjanovich. I got to know him. He was scouting with the Lakers. We'd sit in the media dining room at American Airlines Center, and he'd pump me for information. I'd pump him. Got to know Clyde Drexler. He was a working member of the media there for a while with the Rockets too. So a lot of the legends are still around. But being based in Dallas, I've also covered, Dirk Nowitzki's entire career. I've met Luka, talked to him a couple of times. The current genre, well, that's not the current genre anymore, but the Mavs as they changed guard. Of course, my daughter was born after they won the championship, and I have not been as eager to be in locker rooms and traveling all over the country. But we used to cover with hoopsworld.com, the company that I co-founded. We used to cover Chicago pre-draft, Orlando Summer League, Vegas Summer League, the Rocky Mountain Review. We've covered Chicago pre-draft, draft, NBA finals. It was in San Antonio half the time. I've covered many NBA finals, many all-star games, and all those things. So to say that I have a perspective, I used to even have a column on Hoops World called the Texas Triangle, where I would cover Rockets, Spurs, Mavs, and I was the NBA TV insider for all three teams until the NBA TV moved from New York to Atlanta. Anyway, I've kind of done a lot of stuff. But my heart and soul has always been Rockets basketball ever since the day Hakeem Olajuwon was drafted, and I have followed them, much to my own frustration, avidly as a member of the media, and whatever's left of fandom, it kind of gets worked out of you when you cover the business side of the league. But still, I watch them with fascination, and I love the direction that Raphael Stone took the team after Daryl Morey had his exit over to Philadelphia.
This is perfect then. And I got to start off by quoting a Rockets legend, Vernon Maxwell. He tweeted out, "If you ever needed proof that Dallas is a special kind of stupid, ... unquote." So that leads me into this Dallas Mavericks angle for this whole thing. And were you shocked, Bill, the Mavs dealt Luka?
Well, the funny thing is I was sitting right here working on a piece for the trade deadline saying that Dallas needed to trade Luka, and it's not lack of talent. And I know I've met Mad Max a few times too. Sometimes he's here in Dallas randomly for games, but his candor is always interesting, but he doesn't understand some of the ins and outs of what's going on with the Mavericks. For one thing, Luka, he has off the court issues that I don't want to make him look bad, but there are issues that affect his inability to stay healthy and stay on the court. And when you're talking about a guy who's due for a supermax extension this summer, and he's played 22 games this year, and every year he misses a whole bunch of games, the Mavs have been trying to get him to get on the right page with nutrition and working out, and maybe even taking some time off during the summer to get his body right, but he's not interested really in doing any of those things. So then you have a hard decision to make. Also, if you watch the Mavericks at all, when Luka and Kyrie Irving are both in the game, the ball doesn't move around very much. It's the two of them kind of taking turns. And Luka's amazing. I mean, the guy is Steph Curry with bulk, right? So he's unguardable when he's playing. But when he's out, we've seen a lot of that. And Kyrie Irving is running the whole offense. the ball moves, everybody gets a shot. People play harder on the defensive end because they're participating on the offensive end, the ages-old rule of basketball. And I think the Mavs looked at that, and Nico Harrison said, okay, there's a hard decision to make. Like he said in his press conference today, he gets paid to make the tough calls. And if Anthony Davis comes in healthy, he's got a minor injury he's dealing with, but the Mavs needed a defender in particular. Luka's not somebody that is going to stop anybody defensively anytime soon. Anthony Davis can guard all over the court. He's a threat from all over the court. And the Mavericks have what he wanted in LA, which is big men to play center so he can play power forward. Perfect situation for Anthony Davis. And I got to tell you, it's a dare to be great move. The Mavs were not getting back to the finals the way they're constructed. The Oklahoma City Thunder are better, except head-to-head with Dallas. Houston is better. Memphis is better. And Denver might be better too. So they were not getting back to the NBA Finals. Now, there's a shot they might get back to the NBA Finals. It's a head-scratcher. You got to see how these things play out and what other moves they might make. But at the end of the day, now they are positioned to at least be able to say maybe they'll be there. Yesterday, that was not the case.
Yeah, I get all the stuff that you're saying. To me, it's like you're talking about a guy that could be great for 10 years, figure that stuff out. He had taken you to the finals the year before. His playoff record is one of the great stat records of all time. When you look at what he's done in his first few years, this is unbelievable by anybody at age 25. The thing about the weight and those issues with him and getting in shape and all that sort of stuff, part of that could be youth, which, that's going to end at some point. Yeah. And you would think at some point you start getting, made fun of because you haven't won that title that everybody thinks you could have won. And why is that not happening? And it sort of comes back to you over and over again. But the other part about it, we're in this time. And, I've had some health issues and I've done a lot of stuff as far as nutrition and health and things like that. This is a guy might have just an addictive personality. And there is now this GLP-1 agonist, this, Ozempic is the brand name, but everybody knows it as. I don't know if it's good for an athlete maybe to take it as a full dose, but maybe low dosing it, which is like probably the safer method for everybody to do it, is something that he could use because it switches that thing in your brain where the addictive part over that. And then maybe that is the crutch that he needs to get out of this. You think of it, this is like I think of it in terms of, in a lot of ways of it, drug addiction. We used to have NBA players with cocaine stuff and yep. we went through all that. And Bill, you're old enough to remember that like I am. So
Roy Tarpley, the only guy who could hold Akeem, and drugs kicked him out of the league.
Exactly. So, I mean, I just feel like there was stuff that you could have worked with him. Now he's maybe belligerent now, and you might've had to wait a year or two, but this is a guy, he's a guy who's 10 years down the road. You should have him. And, he's setting you up for this stuff every single year, the same way LeBron has done or whatever. And he's not a guy that relies on this incredible athleticism either.
No.
Like some of these other guys like LeBron has and some other players. So, this is somebody that can sort of skate by at a time, but at some point, if he starts getting injured all the time, then he might look at it differently. If he starts not making the playoffs because he is dealing with this stuff, then he might look at it differently, but you might have to just live through that. Anthony Davis is a constant. He's been a health issue his whole career. This is like, you're going, okay, we don't like him because we're worried about health concerns, but it's Anthony Davis. Like, this is a guy that, and you're relying your entire franchise on two guys that have had health issues and all this sort of stuff. And they don't show up and both him and Kyrie. So yeah, I get where you're coming from. I understand what they're talking about in a way, but at the same point, it's Luka. Like, that's all I got to say. It's Luka. You know what I mean?
Well, you can't teach basketball instinct like he has. The issue off the court has to be really, really bad. The Mavs have tried many things, but to your point, every superstar had to have a moment. And in Houston, we know when Akeem's was. When he was down for a long period of time, I believe that was 93. Don Chaney was coach of the year that year. They had a great push while he was out. And when he returned, he said, I'll come off the bench. You guys are playing great. And that was when Akeem realized the importance. He could take anybody, just like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan could go score 50 anytime he wanted, but the team didn't win when he did that. And Hakeem could go score as many points as he wanted to score. No one could guard him, But before he saw the value of teammates, he wasn't going to have postseason success. So every player, every great player has that moment where they have to realize it's about the team. And I think the nightmare scenario for Dallas is for Luka to have that moment today and tomorrow before he goes to the Lakers and show up and be ready to take things seriously. If Dallas thought that was going to happen, you don't trade a Luka Doncic if you think there's a snowball's chance in hell that he's going to get it. So something that should never come out in the media, I hope it doesn't for the sake of the whole situation, but probably will. Something is going on behind the scenes that Dallas just said, okay, we're not going to get in that Supermax conversation. And so here you are. The Lakers were not the first team Nico Harrison called. Anthony Davis was not their first choice, but they felt like they were over a barrel. And if Anthony Davis can get healthy, he's a 25, 26 point, 10 to 15 rebound. He's a great defender. Like, he brings a lot to the table that last year he played 76 games. Maybe it had to have been whatever happened behind the scenes just in the last, few days, something really bad happened. And this is what Dallas did.
Yeah. Nico said at the press conference, this is about the present and the future. And they said, well, the future. And he said, well, 3 or 4 years in the future. He said, I might not be here. He acted like, I might not be here down the road. Yeah. Every GM has a short life, but you know what? It could happen really quickly now. His career could be over with really quickly in Dallas if this thing blows up pretty quickly. And it's, much more likely to be more patient with Luka than they would be, I think, with this trade and losing the fan base and all that sort of stuff. But hey, I know everybody's, knows all these angles. Let's talk about this from a Rockets perspective. And I'm going to start with the Mavericks in particular, because number one, I am no longer scared of a playoff matchup with them this season because Luka is one of the great performers and he's somebody that can take over in the fourth quarter. And it's like, okay, now you're one guy that's initiating everything as Kyrie Irving. We could stop that a lot easier than we can stop Luka. Number two, we talked about it. They're relying on 2 injury-prone aging stars. So they've closed their title window for 10 years, from 10 to 2 or maybe 3. And number 3, and this is the most intriguing one, the Rockets, Bill, can swap with the Mavs in 2029. Yes. Kyrie and AD turned 36 and 37 that season. So that's another major trade chip added to those 3 Suns first-round picks and the Nets 27 swap, which gives the Rockets a lot of cool options.
Well, it does. I mean, as you were talking about, and if we match up with Dallas in the playoffs now, you just put Amen Thompson on Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you do have a pretty good stopper there. But yeah, I think Dallas said, okay, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, I feel like it's probably a 2-year window. And okay, the Rockets, on the other hand, not only is your window, I mean, I didn't anticipate it being open this year, but I think it is. The Rockets could be in the finals just as much as any other team in the West, especially when you get all the guys that have been banged up. You get Smith back, you get, of course, Sengun's a minor injury, but you get your guys healthy, then you have some tough decisions to make. But I don't think you take Amen Thompson out of that starting lineup because they've been phenomenal since Jabari got hurt and Amen has been starting. I wouldn't change that for anything.
Oh yeah, no question about that.
But they have the ability to match up with all the teams in the West. The only team that really is an issue is the Oklahoma City Thunder, especially when Chet Holmgren comes back. But hey, if that's your only worry, that's the Western Conference Finals. And if you get there, everybody's happy.
I said in the last show that, hey, maybe we should start taking this whole idea seriously. I threw it out there as a perspective. I'm not sure I'm convinced of that myself, but that, and I want to get back to something that's going to be very important to that. And I also, that thing is connected to this new trade chip that I just talked about. I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes, but real quick, Bill, if I look at this from a Lakers side, and this is a Rockets side of the Lakers angle, I wasn't scared of them this season in a playoff matchup. I see no way they aren't a disaster defensively the rest of this season, even 100%. If they can make some moves. But do you see any way they have the pieces to create a defense in the next few days? Because not only did they lose their defensive anchor in Anthony Davis, they also lost Max Christie, who'd become their best wing defender too in this deal.
Which I really like his game too. A couple of years down the line, I think he'll be something. But yeah, here's the move that makes sense. And I wrote this after I got up this morning from the hangover from not hangover, but staying up super late last night following this story was, they have a piece. The Lakers have a piece to move that could land them exactly what they need. His name is LeBron James.
Yeah, but him? I'm of the opinion that LeBron is a big fan of Luka. He's actually wanted him to be wearing his shoe line, I believe. They've always had a really good connection. And, LeBron did all of this stuff of getting his, son there and whatever. And the Lakers can move him, but he's got a no trade. So,
he has to agree to it.
Yeah, that's a big part of it as well.
It has to be somewhere where he's got, it has to be Golden State where he and Steph it's got to be a place where he has a better shot at a title, because LeBron's window is very narrow, very, very shrinking. So will the Lakers do that? I don't know. Kind of like I was writing about Luka. They should, but will they? I don't know. They're talking about trying to find a center, a defensive presence, Robert Williams or somebody. And I'm looking around at the players who are available. Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah, Robert Williams is the one that makes sense, but
but he's been horrible for Portland. So different.
Well, no, he's looked good from everything that I've heard, and he's getting healthier. And I mean, health is an issue with him.
Mm-hmm.
Would you give up, if you're the Lakers, that first round pick that you kept in this trade? That's the question mark there. He's about the only guy I see out there that really could be an elite defensive center that they could bring in immediately. The other centers available just aren't there,
Ayton, they've been talking about Ayton. They've been talking, I guess they decided not to go Nurkic. Neither one. I mean, come on. If you want to make the playoffs in the Western Conference, no.
And I don't think it's just, like I said, I think even if you got the center, it's a lot of moving parts. Luka's still a few days away from maybe a week or two from being back. And, so I don't know where he's at right now. So there's all that. And I just feel it's just too much. I think it's too much on the fly for them. So we'll see how they handle it. Before we roll on, I do want to remind our listeners about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has a unique approach to fantasy sports with their simple pick'em style format. You can select players you believe will outperform expectations without the traditional daily fantasy drawbacks. If you feel like drafting, which many fantasy owners feel is the best part, is your deal, then Underdog offers simple drafts where you select a squad and compete for serious cash. You'll find all the major leagues and college sports on Underdog, plus user-friendly interface, making it easy and fun to play. Jump in the fun by clicking the link and using the promo code HOU right in the YouTube and podcast description. Easy to find for you guys. If you do come aboard, you get a free pick and up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Not a bad deal. $1,000 in bonus cash, the free pick. So go check out Underdog and download their really cool app to your favorite mobile device. All right, Bill, the Rockets looked awful against the Nets, but I want to get into the concerns that have popped up in the last few days specifically. Before we get there, though, how about Alvin Sengun making his first All-Star team? You'd have thought prior to this year that his defense was never going to be the thing that put him there, but I believe it did, because he beat out Sabonis because of that defense.
Yeah, he's certainly not a defender in the mold of Olajuwon, but
No.
or even Yao Ming, but he has some similar issues. I wrote about this a couple days ago. My sports blog Substack is Not Another Sports Article, NASA, for the Houston connection. But all the things Sengun needs to work on, first of all, footwork is number one. He's worked with Hakeem. He needs to book another session because
his defensive footwork has gotten a lot better, although it slipped in the last month and a half, I think.
Which is why Steven Adams is.
Yeah, and against the Celtics, he did a great job, though. That's the thing. I mean, Sabonis, everybody likes a lot of stuff that Sabonis does, but you have to put a really elite defender next to him. And there's great defensive players around Sengun, but he's done a great job staying vertical around the basket. Definitely he's way better than he was, light years better than he was with his footwork on the perimeter, and that not using him in drop like Silas was using him his first couple of years, the changes that Udoka made. But a lot of it is just the jump this year to just him being a lot more attentive on that end and just the details and all that sort of stuff. He's, again, it's slipped a little bit in recent weeks. And, I still think the conditioning is a factor for him. It's why maybe they want to give him a couple of days off. It might not just be the injury. My guess is, hey, let's give him a few days off. He's also going to get the All-Star break, the rest, but now he's not going to get the rest, the whole All-Star break as he was before. And that's why I'm like, I'm one of these Rockets fans. Like, I don't care if my guy makes the All-Star team, because it just takes a lot out of you a lot of times.
Dirk used to hate it. I'd always see him wherever All-Star was, and he'd be like, oh, I got to do another one of these. But then the camera comes on, and of course, well, obviously, it's great to be, so it is. It's a drag, but he's a young player. He can take it. It's just that I love that they have Steven Adams healthy, and man, he's almost 100% now, because it's a reminder, okay, sit down for a minute. Now, remember, you got to be attentive. But he has
it's also great because Steven Adams is playing so well. I mean, he, in some ways, his plus minus in his units has been spectacular, and he's doing all these things. But it also makes it great for Sengun because it keeps him fresh, I think, in fourth quarters with these longer stretches for Steven Adams. And they didn't beat the Grizzlies because, they were missing Sengun and that ability for somebody to go to. I mean, they've got other issues in the fourth quarter, and he doesn't always solve them, but it does help when Steven Adams is able to give him a lot more rest going into late in the fourth quarter. And I've seen him hit his free throws a little bit better lately.
The last couple games.
At the end of the fourth quarter, because guess what? He's got the legs to do it.
That was the problem against Memphis, and even the game before that with Atlanta, where, at the beginning of the season, the Rockets were not holding leads at all. They could be ahead to start the fourth quarter, and they would lose the game. Now they're losing the lead, but those three games in a row, Cleveland, Boston, well, even Atlanta, where you have to have some late game heroics to win the game. But hey, that's progress. This is a young team. They've made progress this season. You see measurable progress from 10 game to 10 game set. And that's the teaching, the coaching. It's also basketball IQ that's kicking in. I think an issue that they're going to run into is, I'm not sure, Jalen Green is very athletic, but his basketball IQ, and even Fred VanVleet, his late game decision-making, shot selection, sometimes he takes a three where you're like, really? Like a long, hard three, and it helps give away the lead. So the next developmental step for the Rockets in terms of their offense is to figure out, okay, you still have to have a sense of urgency. Yes, you've got a 14-point lead with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. You got to keep going. The other team is not going to quit. It's the NBA. So the first time you pull up, instead of forcing the issue, instead of working, making a pass to Sengun or Adams and a backdoor for Amen Thompson, or the first time you let up, the other team is coming for you.
Yeah. The other part is the game slows down in the fourth quarter, and that does not help the Rockets out. The other teams are more locked in, and you just don't have the guys. And that's going to lead me to where I want to go next, Bill, because this is something I definitely got to talk about.
Okay.
At some point in this show, just a couple of minor problems that popped up. You mentioned the Sengun injury. VanVleet turned his ankle. Outside of the Grizz game, VanVleet's been playing fantastic recently, shooting great. Every year he misses a couple of weeks, though. He's still irreplaceable, whether the Rockets fans want to face that fact or not. But Bill, this leads me to the future of the point guard position. And you talked about Jalen and Fred and their issues. Amen's going to be a long project if he ever gets there. Reed Sheppard's not close, but hold that thought on Sheppard for a second, because I want to talk about that in a little bit. If the Rockets do not trade for a point guard, don't you think they're right back at VanVleet next year? And how difficult is it to win a title if he's your starting point guard?
Well, it's an uphill battle. My favorite, if it was fantasy or 2K and I could just do whatever I want to do with the roster, I'd trade Fred VanVleet for De'Aaron Fox is what I would do, because De'Aaron Fox with Jalen Green and Amen Thompson, I mean, oh my God. And also that would keep him out of San Antonio, because I think we all know Fox has at least one eye on the Spurs. His wife is from San Antonio. He and Wemby together would be stunning. So if the Rockets were able to make a move for him, it would keep him out of San Antonio, and he would be an elite guy who can execute and has a lot of elements to his game that Fred does not have. But I don't know how likely that is. The Rockets are not. Rafael Stone has said anytime he's asked, nope, we're standing pat. We're going to see how this works. And I don't blame him. This is not a time to start making big changes on a team that's second in the Western Conference. So I am concerned about the point guard position. Fred has been, the big brother a lot of the guys needed. He's brought a level of maturity. He's helped some guys progress, but is he really a championship point guard? He was for Toronto.
As a bench player. As a bench
player. So is he ready to grow into the starter? I like him as a backup point guard. Starter, I don't think it's Amen Thompson, although I will say if Amen can develop a jump shot, they need to get Chip England or a shooting coach.
That's worth mentioning. We are seeing that improvement before our eyes. Even in this recent stretch here, last couple of games, even though they've lost, he was hitting middies regularly. So that has been a super positive. He could get there as far as the jump shot, but point guard is way more than jump shot. And that's going to be a big part of it. His handle, if he could get his handle super tight, that's going to be a big part of it, because once his handle goes tight, he's such a great athlete.
Yep.
If you back up on him, he can rise up and shoot it. We're starting to see, like I said, the midi is coming in pretty hot. And then if he gets further in, the floater, all that stuff. But that's going to take his handle getting better, but it's also going to take his IQ and ability to set up the offense. I mean, that's something that they always talk about with Fred. And, I said I wanted to circle back to Reed Sheppard. I got to bring this up because it's early and he's a rookie early in his career and the sample size is low, but I just want to mention what I'm seeing so far. Defensively, he's terrible. Lateral mobility, bad, easily overpowered. Yep. We saw it against the Nets at 6'1". You've either got to have wingspan or lower body strength or broad shoulders or junk in your trunk. He was gifted with none of that. He's got zero. And what about the shooting, which is what everybody banks on? Look at his three-point stats, though. When you combine summer league preseason and regular season so far, he's shooting 27.2%, 30 for 110. I have people on my social media saying, sample size, it's a small sample size, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's 110 shots. He had 144 attempts at Kentucky, just 34 more shots. If that's a small sample size, then so is Kentucky. And for those who say, Bill, what about, it's early in his career and stuff like that. But these are open shots. A lot of these shots that he's getting, I feel like maybe you should be concerned, because we saw this exact same thing with Jabari coming out of college. Remember, Jabari shot 42%. You drafted both guys at the 3 spot in the draft because their shooting was elite. That's the reason why they were drafted number 3. You can talk about all the other stuff. Oh, Reed's got some good hands. Reed's an IQ guy. Jabari's tall, lengthy, can provide some defense. But I'm just a little concerned after one season that this stuff is an issue. And if that's the case, then I don't know if you want to hold on to Reed too long, because the longer you hold on to him, the stock just goes down.
It sure does. And, what do you have, 49 points in that one league? That's what people talk about now. Oh, he had 48 points in the G League. Okay. Jalen Green was freaking amazing in the G League. And look how long it took him to even be decent in the NBA. Like that whole argument. And I talked to Sharif Abdur-Rahim about this last season, and their argument is, well, and it sounds good. You're sending a kid who should be in college, but he's not going to go to college. So you're going to send him to the G League, and the Rio Grande Valley Vipers are going to run the same system. And what the Rockets are doing, the Austin Spurs do the same thing. They run Greg Popovich's system. Those guys are ready to plug and play. It sounds good. Here's the thing. When Jalen was playing in the G League, there's no fans in the stands. There's no pressure. And the defensive pressure is you might as well be playing playground pickup ball compared to professional
the quality
basketball.
Is like summer league. I compare it to a lot of ways.
And a lot of the guys from summer league then are in the G League because they're not good enough for the NBA. So I don't think, it sounds good. Imagine if Jalen had gone to Duke or North Carolina or Kentucky or Kansas for a year. He'd have been ready to be an impact player much sooner than it was midway. It was after the All-Star break last year that it was like something finally clicked and we finally got some consistency. And now he had a great January, but then he also disappears. So I'm not a huge proponent of saying, well, look at the G League stats. I think that's it's nice. It's something to talk about. It's not indicative of the NBA. And Reed has some time to spend in the weight room. He has some time to spend in the gym because at that size, if he's not going to bulk up, I'm with you. The Rockets don't have time to wait. He's back where they were 2 years ago, and the Rockets are second in the Western Conference. If you could trade him, package him, get a player that helps you now, especially a three-point shooter, you do it.
I think he's still the guy that is going to be packaged in something of a bigger trade. And, we talked about the point guard issues, and I'm going to connect all of what I've been talking about back to the Luka trade in just a bit. But hey, what do you listeners think? Get in the YouTube comments. I definitely look at all the comments. So please be kind and let me know what you think. And hey, if you want to co-host with me, I'm looking for candidates. My pal Stephen Kerr's schedule got crazy, so I'm looking for someone who follows Rockets, Astros, Texans, and Cougars. Reach out on social media or through my email, HoustonSportsTalkPodcast@gmail.com. If you're a new fan of the show, please support us. Easy to do by subscribing on YouTube and with your favorite podcast app. Of course, give us the thumbs up as well. Now, Bill, if the Rockets point guard is the biggest concern, which I believe it is going forward with the franchise, I want to go back to De'Aaron Fox, what you were talking about earlier. The Spurs are playing hardball on trading Stephon Castle. There are just two teams most believe he definitely re-signed with, the Rockets and Spurs, of course. We're seeing over and over these awful droughts in the fourth quarter. We just talked about it. We don't need a playoff sample to know this will not change. It's not going to suddenly disappear 2 or 3 months from now. No. As I said on Wednesday's show, I see a path where you don't trade any rotation player, including Van Vliet, to get this deal done. You can keep this whole young core together, along with getting somebody like De'Aaron Fox. I mean, except for Reed Sheppard, that's the only guy that you're going to send out. And if you can get all this young core with De'Aaron Fox, that's 3 playoffs that you can really evaluate where you are with these guys. But it's 3 chances to have De'Aaron and these guys. At that point, you can move on from Jalen if he's not a max guy at the end of his contract, or you can deal a still 30-year-old in his prime De'Aaron Fox. The value is not going to drop that much if Jalen's turned into a superstar. So you can choose between one of those 2 guys in 2.5 years. If you're lucky enough that that's an issue, that you have to choose between those 2 guys. Plus the Rockets now have this potential juicy first-round Mavs swap. So you shouldn't have to deal all the premium trade pieces if an even bigger fish becomes available. I don't think you're going to I don't think the Kings, looking at what the Spurs are thinking right now and how they don't seem to be wanting to throw the whole thing at this deal. I don't think you got to throw like every first round pick that you got, and even all the premium first round. You could actually hold on to one of those premium picks that we talked about. If you wait till the summer, it's one less playoff run with Fox, and the Kings will have, guess what? The Kings are going to have more teams in play for Fox. So that trade's going to be much harder. And the value of getting Fox goes down because you've got one less playoff and you're giving away more to get him. So those are my reasons, Bill, where it just like, I think the fans think, oh, there's always something better out there. This is pretty darn good right now. And you don't have to have, it's not, we get Luka or bust. And by the way, Luka's off the table now.
What I'll say about that is Sacramento, what is the plan? Do they have a plan? DeMar DeRozan was a head scratcher to me. Now, if you move De'Aaron Fox, are they going into total rebuild mode? If they are, then Houston is the best team. Houston, Oklahoma City, maybe Brooklyn. Those are the teams that have the best draft capital, I believe, going forward the next couple of years. If Sacramento is going to say scrap it and rebuild, come on to Houston, buddy. You know, San Antonio is 4 hours down the freeway if you take the tollway around Austin.
Obviously, De'Aaron doesn't fit Oklahoma City. I mean, they have
No.
interest in him. They've got SGA. I mean, Brooklyn, he would have no interest in going there because he would like to go to Texas. He probably wants to be in a warmer state.
Yep.
So this is a guy that it's just so important for fans to understand this. Not every guy wants to come here. This guy wants to come here.
Right.
And he makes you better, and he fixes places where there's an issue. And I also hear, well, but he doesn't shoot threes. And my answer to that is, can you put the ball in the basket more often than most guys? And that's what he does. And we saw this. You remember this, Bill, back with the old Rockets in 17 and 18 with the Harden Rockets. When the three's going, what do you got? And De'Aaron Fox has got mid-range. He can get to the basket. Yep. There are other options that he has. And I just find that just as valuable. And I think they could figure things out. I know it's like, well, he can't shoot. Ahmed can't shoot. Sengun can't shoot. But they're all really good players. They're all really smart. And they all know how to get the ball in the basket, even though they can't shoot.
Well, you still need a shooter, no matter what. Maybe Herter comes over in the deal. They're talking about him too. Somebody that's a pure shooter. But at the end of the day, if Steve Francis had any court vision, he was the perfect point guard to pair with Yao and Tracy McGrady, because he's the black hole that sucks the defense in. And then you make a dish. And Steve didn't know how to do this. I once joked I was sitting courtside with Cynthia Cooper at a Rockets game, and Yao Ming was wide open underneath the basket. And Francis, there was a turnover at midcourt, and rather than just throw the ball to Yao, Steve had to dribble down the floor and wound up getting his shot blocked. And you're going, I said, Cynthia, I would trade you for Steve Francis right now. Because it was frustrating. De'Aaron Fox doesn't have that tunnel vision for the basket. He's somebody that you have to guard. He's going to get right to the hole. And then who's standing over here? Is Amen Thompson cutting in from the weak side? Sengun's open from 8 feet. Jalen's open for a 3. Dylan Brooks is open for a 3. I just love a point guard who can suck the defense in and dish. And that would be the dynamic that De'Aaron Fox brings, that Fred VanVleet is not exactly that guy.
Well, he just breaks. He's got the athleticism. He can break guys down, all of that sort of stuff. And, he's a bucket in the fourth quarter. He's, like I mentioned it before, a top 2 or 3 in the NBA the last 3 years straight of getting points in the fourth quarter.
And that's what he needs.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, it's, and I know that the Rockets aren't going to do this. I'm just saying, I just think it could be this could be a big mistake. And what Rockets fans also say, hey, but we got to keep everything for when that top five guy becomes available. If there's anything that fans should learn once again this weekend, even if that player is available, you might not have a shot at him. Yep. Nobody may call you. He wants to go to a certain team. It's not you. By the time the perfect player comes along, your draft capital might not be that great. It could be too old. The guy could be too old. The guy could be too injured. Waiting for that perfect player, Bill, it's just not a guarantee.
It's not. You got to grasp the moment. And that would be, getting De'Aaron Fox would be a grasping the moment move. I'm with you. They don't do it, but I would. I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, Devin Booker's a guy that everybody, let's wait for Devin Booker and the Suns and that sort of stuff. But he's a better assist guy than a Jalen Green is, for example. Better athlete than Fred VanVleet, but I don't know if he's like the ideal guy that you want running point. And I feel like I have to keep making this point, no pun intended, again and again. Point guard is where this team's missing something. And it's the thing that connects everything for a team that's trying to get to a championship moving forward.
Look at Phoenix when the idea was Devin Booker was going to be the point guard. When they signed Bradley Beal, I was like, here's something that's not missing in Phoenix. An undersized shooting guard who can't defend anybody. Great move. So Devin Booker was going to be the point guard. Gee, that didn't work. So this year they brought in a point guard. It's been better, but he's not an elite point guard. So no, I don't think Devin Booker's not a point guard solution at all.
I don't know where the Rockets go to find this point guard down the road, but I'm going to reiterate this to fans. Fred VanVleet if you don't want to get the Aaron Fox, get ready for Fred VanVleet for the next 2 or 3 years, because I don't know where this magical guy is going to come from otherwise, because this is what they really need. This is what the Rockets absolutely need. You have a guy right now in his prime that's available, that's ready to come to Houston.
And his strengths are perfectly matched to what Houston needs. Fourth quarter, all the stuff we've said, perfect pick.
Yeah, except for, again, I know people, the shooting. I know, but the shooting is 48% from the 48% from the field compared to Jalen for his career. Even this year, I think it's around like 43% or something like that. 5% in the NBA, it's a big difference. It's a huge difference. And, if the Aaron Fox can just learn how to play with Sengun. Oh, wait. I'm hearing that he plays with a guy on his team that's very similar. It's like, this is like, it's sitting right in your face. I said it in the last show. I know, but I'm reiterating this because I think there's just like points that people put in my comments, and I'm like, okay, let me throw that. Apparently I didn't express myself well enough, and let me hit some of those points that you guys are worried about. You guys are concerned at 3-point shooting, but there's another guy out there and we got to save it. And we got to, look, man, this is the NBA. It's just, it doesn't always happen perfectly. You're not going to always get the perfect situation, the perfect guy. Everybody wants 23-year-old LeBron James to just go, hey, I want to come to the Rockets.
Right.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Any last thoughts on where the Rockets are or Luka before we close it out?
What I look for is growth, right? So you look for growth, and we have seen the first third of the season, the Rockets were not executing down the stretch and they would lose games. The middle third of the season, they were not executing in the fourth down the stretch, but they've won a heck of a lot of games against the best teams in the Eastern Conference. When they needed a bucket, they got it, except the Memphis game. And of course, Sengun out changed that dynamic a little bit. So now we've got another basically roughly third of the season. If the growth from the first third to the second third is repeated, if the team is that much better, again, just as much better as they are from the beginning of the season, where will they be? I think they'll be in the Western Conference Finals. Can they beat? I'm assuming, you never know, but I'm assuming Oklahoma City with Chet Holmgren healthy. That's a tall order. SGA is amazing, and Amen Thompson can't even stop him. So that's a problem. But hey, if we get to the Western Conference Finals, is anybody upset with that outcome? I think there's still room to grow, even if we don't address point guard. And I think we have every reason to believe that growth will happen.
Last thing I wanted to mention before we close out, and if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see some video of this guy, Alvin Franklin, Slama Jama legend, passed away this weekend. Alvin Franklin was part of those great Slama Jama teams, a point guard. And what you're seeing right now is him as a freshman against Louisville and what many call the best Final Four game in history, or one of the best for sure. It's the best win in the Final Four in Houston Cougar history. He was special that game and special in other games for the Houston Cougars. So we want to bid farewell to him. This guy was the original point guard for Akeem and Clyde and that great group, gone way too soon. He's in his early 60s, I believe.
Yep.
So farewell to Alvin Franklin. I just want to again thank Bill for doing this. And I mean, just it'll probably take me weeks before I compute this whole trade has actually, it still hasn't hit me, the whole thing probably. I'm still working on this.
Right.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.